Hey everyone, it's Jimmy with the usual quick reminder to hit like, subscribe, and the notification bell and turn on all notifications. Also, don't forget to leave a quick comment saying where you're listening from or just drop a quick "I'm doing my part." On a cold December night in 2021, a shocking discovery was made in a Belgrade apartment. Kristina Dukic, a 21-year-old gaming YouTuber and streamer who went by Kika, was found dead under puzzling circumstances. To her hundreds of thousands of fans, Kika's sudden death was devastating, but in the days and months that followed, her passing became embroiled in dark mystery and speculation. Was this vibrant influencer driven to end her life by relentless cyberbullying? Or, as some chilling clues suggest, was Kika actually eliminated by someone in her inner circle? In the end, a shocking discovery by this young YouTuber's mother would raise serious questions about a cover-up. Kika was a Serbian influencer famed in her home country for her online gaming content. Born in 2000 and raised in Belgrade, she launched her YouTube channel as a teenager in 2015 and quickly rose to fame as a gaming prodigy. Kika was one of the very few female gaming YouTubers in Serbia at the time, which helped her amass a large following at a young age. She initially posted Minecraft videos, but later expanded to popular titles like Grand Theft Auto 5, Counter-Strike, and League of Legends, along with vlogs and comedy skits. By 2021, her YouTube channel had garnered over 700,000 subscribers and tens of millions of views, and she had more than 400,000 followers on Instagram. Notably, she produced her content exclusively in Serbian, making her a fairly major celebrity in this country of only 6.5 million people. Kika even competed semi-professionally in Counter-Strike, earning a reputation as one of Serbia's top female players. Off-screen, Kika was described as energetic and outgoing, often featuring her family and friends in her videos. Fans were drawn to her humor and candid personality. However, life in the public eye also exposed Kika to the toxic side of internet fame. As a young woman breaking into a male-dominated gaming scene, she faced hateful comments from some corners of the internet. Unfortunately, this hostility would escalate dramatically in the years leading up to her death. In 2019, Kika became embroiled in an online feud that would haunt her thereafter. Her rival was Bogdan Ilic, better known as Baka Praz, Serbia's most followed YouTuber at the time. What began as social media sniping exploded into an ugly public conflict. The two influencers even confronted each other on a national television show, trading barbs in front of a live audience. After that clash, Kika became the target of a merciless cyberbullying campaign, allegedly orchestrated by his hardcore fan base. Baka Praz released a diss track ridiculing Kika and uploaded numerous videos which some claim egged on the trolls. Soon, Kika's social media pages were flooded with hateful messages, insults, mockery, and even urges that she should end herself. The harassment continued unabated right up until Kika's final days. Shockingly, even on the day her death was announced, cruel comments continued to pour in from internet trolls. Late on December 8th, 2021, tragedy struck. Kika was at her apartment in Belgrade that night, allegedly planning to celebrate her mother's birthday the next day. At around 11:40 p.m., police responding to an emergency call found Kika's lifeless body in her home. According to initial reports, there were no obvious signs of foul play at the scene. Some prescription medications were discovered near her, which led investigators to suspect an overdose from the outset. The devastating news became public the following day, December 9th, when Kika's mother, Natasha Dukic, announced her daughter's passing on social media. In those first days, the prevailing narrative was that Kika had done it herself, likely as a result of depression worsened by years of bullying. The Ministry of the Interior confirmed an investigation was ongoing, but gave no indication of third-party involvement. Few people doubted this initial conclusion. After all, Kika's case sadly fit a familiar pattern of an online bullying victim driven to despair. However, as more details emerged, disturbing questions began to arise about what exactly happened on that final night. After a thorough investigation over the ensuing months, authorities eventually closed Kika's case, but their official findings did little to quell the public's intrigue. In July 2022, the Belgrade Public Prosecutor's Office announced that forensic tests confirmed Kika had died from a fatal overdose. Police even went as far as to question Kika's former rival Baka Praz during the investigation, given the very public feud linking him to her distress. However, he was ultimately released the same day without charges. And ultimately, no one was held legally responsible for Kika's demise. Serbian authorities determined that while the online bullying she endured was cruel, there was no evidence of a direct crime against her. For most observers, the story might have ended there. An unfortunate act, a cautionary tale about online bullying taken too far. But Kika's family wasn't satisfied with the official version of events. From the start, her mother Natasha harbored grave doubts that her daughter truly did this to herself. As time passed, those doubts only grew, and a very different theory of Kika's death began to take shape. Natasha Dukic, Kika's mother, couldn't shake the feeling that something about the death didn't add up. In late July 2022, she released a bombshell video titled, "They Didn't Give Her a Chance to Survive," in which she publicly challenged the official story. She laid out a series of suspicious circumstances and inconsistencies surrounding Kika's death, effectively arguing that her daughter may have been killed by someone close to her. According to Kika's mother, several red flags point to the possibility of foul play. Disturbingly, a farewell note found on Kika's computer was proven to have been typed after she was already dead, strongly suggesting it was staged by someone else. Even more unsettling, someone logged into Kika's YouTube account the day before her death, and a pre-prepared death announcement was uploaded just hours after she died. When her sister identified the body, she noticed a bruise beneath Kika's eye, signs of a possible struggle never addressed in the autopsy. Potential evidence also went missing. Despite the building having cameras, police claimed no surveillance footage was available. Investigators oddly relied on Kika's friend for the apartment entry code rather than the family. There had also been escalating turmoil with an ex-boyfriend who had allegedly broken into her apartment and deleted her Instagram account that same day. Finally, despite official claims of prior attempts, Natasha insists Kika had never genuinely tried to end her life before, arguing that past incidents were just outbursts. Overall, these elements formed the foundation of the mother's belief that Kika didn't end herself, but was instead the victim of foul play. Taken together, these assertions paint a very different picture from the official narrative. Natasha Dukic strongly suspects that a third party orchestrated Kika's death. Today, the death of Kristina Dukic remains an emotionally charged and unresolved saga. Officially, her case is closed and ruled as an overdose, yet her family and many fans remain unconvinced, steadfast in their belief that the true circumstances were covered up and that a perpetrator might have gotten away. It's hard to ignore the troubling possibility that someone may have taken advantage of Kika's reputation for struggling with depression and used it as cover. Her emotional vulnerability was public knowledge, repeatedly weaponized by online trolls, which could have made it easier to construct a narrative that authorities would readily accept. When details like the note being typed after her death, missing surveillance footage, and the oddly timed login to her YouTube account are placed side by side, this looks suspicious. If a third party knew investigators would immediately lean toward her doing it herself, then staging the environment to fit that expectation would be disturbingly simple. In that sense, Kika's own public pain may have been used to hide what truly happened to her. It was a scorching summer morning on June 3rd, 1927, when Italy's cycling hero Ottavio Bottecchia set out on a training ride, one he would never finish. A farmer later found the two-time Tour de France winner lying bloodied and barely conscious by a country road near a vineyard in northeastern Italy. His skull was fractured and his collarbone was broken. Bottecchia's bicycle, curiously, was propped up nearby without a scratch, and there were no skid marks or any signs of a typical crash. Less than 2 weeks later, at just 32 years old, this famed cyclist was dead at the height of his fame, and a dark mystery had begun to take shape. Even now, a century later, the truth remains elusive, and the tale of Bottecchia's end continues to haunt cycling lore. Ottavio Bottecchia rose from humble beginnings to become one of the greatest cyclists of the 1920s. Born in 1894 as the eighth of 9 children in a poor Italian family, he had minimal schooling and worked as a shoemaker and bricklayer in his youth. He served in World War I as a bicycle courier, where he discovered a remarkable endurance for cycling while ferrying messages through mountainous battlefields. After the war, Bottecchia turned to competitive racing and rapidly made a name for himself. In 1924, he achieved a stunning victory in the Tour de France, becoming the first Italian to win that race, and he repeated the triumph in 1925. Despite his fame, Bottecchia remained the bricklayer of Friuli, a nickname recalling his working-class roots and ongoing reality. Beyond his athletic prowess, Bottecchia quietly harbored socialist, anti-fascist beliefs under Mussolini's regime. Though not openly political, he and his friends read anti-fascist pamphlets, and he made little secret of his disdain for Mussolini's rule. Ironically, Benito Mussolini himself donated money toward Bottecchia's cycling team in the early 1920s, perhaps hoping to bask in the glory of a national sports hero. By 1927, Bottecchia was a national icon, a 2-time Tour champion who was widely expected to vie for a 3rd Tour victory that year. In late May 1927, tragedy had already struck Bottecchia's family. His brother Giovanni was killed in a road accident, hit by a car while cycling near their hometown. Ottavio returned from France to Italy for the funeral and continued training. On June 3rd, 1927, just weeks before the next tour, he headed out alone at dawn for what he assumed would be a routine ride. He even asked for a hot bath to be ready for his return in a few hours. That ride would be his last. Later that morning, locals discovered Bottecchia collapsed beside a quiet road near the village of Pionis. And nope, you don't need to rewind there. That's the name. He was alive but barely, found with a bloodied head, a cracked skull, a broken collarbone, and other fractures. Villagers carried the unconscious champion to a nearby inn, where a priest administered last rites. He was then rushed by cart to a hospital in Gemona. Doctors struggled to make sense of Bottecchia's condition. Strangely, his bicycle was undamaged and found by the roadside, with no skid marks or scratches on the bike to suggest any crash. Given the searing heat that day, the immediate theory was that he collapsed from sunstroke and fell. Authorities quickly embraced this explanation and hastily closed the case. Officially, the Tour hero's death was deemed a tragic accident, sunstroke, and bad luck. The convenient story even satisfied Bottecchia's family, who received a large insurance payout and had little reason to challenge it. He never regained consciousness to tell his side of the story. After nearly 12 days in a coma, he succumbed to his injuries on June 15th, 1927. Italy mourned the loss of a champion, but as the shock subsided, murmurs of doubt grew louder. Many found it hard to believe that a rider of Bottecchia's skill would simply keel over from heat, neatly park his bike, and somehow crack his own skull in the fall. The circumstances were too unusual to accept at face value, and soon a dark question began to shadow Bottecchia's legacy. Nearly a century later, the death of Ottavio Bottecchia remains an unsolved mystery. Over the years, a slew of alleged confessions and conspiracy theories have emerged. One theory holds that Bottecchia was deliberately eliminated by supporters of Benito Mussolini's regime. Bottecchia's socialist leanings and fame put him at odds with Mussolini, and he very clearly wasn't above using violence to enforce his will. In Italy at the time, star cyclists were national symbols, so a hint of disloyalty from a beloved rider could make him a target. Decades later, the village priest who gave Bottecchia last rites reportedly admitted that the cyclist's fatal wounds were the result of a beating for his political beliefs. One story claims a local government official felt insulted by Ottavio's lack of allegiance to Mussolini. Under this theory, this individual sent black-shirt thugs to ambush him on his ride. No concrete proof ever emerged, but many still find this theory plausible. A more rustic tale blames a rural farmer for Bottecchia's death. Decades later, a farmer supposedly confessed on his deathbed that he caught Bottecchia in his vineyard eating grapes and angrily hurled a stone that knocked him unconscious. Realizing who it was, the panicked farmer dragged Bottecchia to the roadside and fled. This dramatic confession, while intriguing, has obvious gaps. It does not explain Bottecchia's multiple broken bones, and no witnesses ever confirmed the story. Another theory suggests that organized crime was involved. A Sardinian dock worker in New York allegedly confessed that he was hired by an Italian gambling ring to eliminate both Ottavio and his brother Giovanni. This suggests Giovanni's fatal accident and Ottavio's mysterious crash were both orchestrated hits. These claims were never verified, but they add a sinister mob element to the story. Ottavio Bottecchia's life was the stuff of legend well before it was cut short. He rose from poverty to conquer the Tour de France twice, becoming a symbol of hope and perseverance for his country. His mysterious demise, however, has in most ways overshadowed those athletic feats over the course of history. On a warm Sunday evening in July 2015, 28-year-old tech visionary Josh Greenberg was discovered lifeless in his Gainesville, Florida home. Greenberg was the co-founder of the once popular music streaming service Grooveshark, a pioneer of online music sharing that had just shut down amid legal battles. Josh Greenberg was a driven innovator and a beloved figure in his hometown. Born in 1987, Greenberg grew up in Florida and attended the University of Florida in Gainesville. It was there, as an undergraduate in 2006, that he teamed up with two classmates to create Grooveshark. Greenberg served as Chief Technology Officer, shaping the platform's technical vision. He also engaged in other ventures, co-founding a software startup and helping launch a local coding academy to train aspiring programmers. Energetic and passionate, Greenberg aimed to transform Gainesville into a place where startups could thrive. He was known for mentoring younger entrepreneurs and giving back generously. Grooveshark began as a scrappy student project, but quickly grew into a massive online music platform. Launched in the mid-2000s, it allowed users to upload and stream music for free, putting virtually any song at their fingertips. This YouTube for music approach filled a niche in the pre-Spotify era. Before long, Grooveshark amassed over 35 million users worldwide at its peak. The startup punched above its weight, even attracting major advertisers and reportedly generating tens of millions in revenue despite minimal funding. For a time, Greenberg and his team rode high as music streaming pioneers, turning their college experiment into a global service. Grooveshark became a popular name among tech-savvy music lovers, and its success put Gainesville on the map as an unlikely tech hub. Yet the very feature that made Grooveshark popular, letting users upload any music, also made it controversial. Unlike licensed platforms, Groove Shark didn't initially pay royalties for much of its vast song library. The young founders insisted they operated within the law, citing that they were just a hosting platform, but many in the music industry vehemently disagreed. Critics accused Groove Shark of building a business on pirated content and cheating artists out of earnings. Despite warnings, the platform managed to attract millions of users and high-profile sponsors, even as record labels grew increasingly alarmed. By the early 2000s, Groove Shark was embroiled in a protracted legal battle with the major record companies. Universal Music Group, Sony Music, and Warner Music joined forces to sue the startup for massive copyright infringement damages. The litigation dragged on for 4 years, casting a shadow over Groove Shark's future. In April 2015, facing the risk of crippling penalties, Greenberg and his co-founders agreed to an out-of-court settlement. This deal allowed Groove Shark to avoid potentially hundreds of millions of dollars in fines had the case gone to trial. They shut down Groove Shark's website and, in a public letter to users, apologized for the mistakes of not securing proper music licenses. A court order soon followed in May 2015, forcing the service to stay closed and its parent company to pay $50 million to rights holders. It was the end of Groove Shark's 8-year run. The closure of Groove Shark was a bitter moment, but those closest to Josh Greenberg say he made peace with it. Having finally resolved the lawsuit that had loomed over him for years, Greenberg was surprisingly upbeat. According to his mother, he felt more relieved than defeated after shutting down the company. He had already begun turning his attention to new opportunities, carrying on with the positive attitude he was known for in Gainesville's startup scene. Less than 3 months after Groove Shark's demise, tragedy struck. On July 19, 2015, Josh Greenberg's girlfriend returned from a weekend trip and found him unresponsive in their bed. A day earlier, he had seemed perfectly healthy, so this loss came without any warning. Police investigators were baffled. There were no signs of foul play whatsoever, but nor did the evidence suggest he did it to himself. It appeared that Greenberg simply died in his sleep, making his death all the more perplexing. An autopsy was performed, but the initial results found nothing conclusive. Greenberg had been physically healthy, and examiners saw no injuries or obvious medical conditions. Toxicology tests later revealed only trace amounts of common substances, with nothing that could explain his death. In the official report, the cause of death remained unknown. The promising life of Josh Greenberg had ended as suddenly and mysteriously as a light switched off. News of Greenberg's untimely death sent shockwaves through his family, friends, and colleagues. Those closest to Josh were adamant on one point: this wasn't something he did himself. Despite the heartbreaking end of Groove Shark, everyone around him attested that he had been in good spirits throughout the summer of 2015. He was optimistic, excited about future projects, and finally free from the burden of litigation. His mother, Lori, stressed that she saw no signs of depression or despair in her son, reinforcing that he was looking forward to the next stage of his life. Investigators agreed. They found no evidence that Greenberg had intentionally hurt himself, just as they found no hint of any intruder or foul play in his home. Years later, the exact cause of Josh Greenberg's death remains an unsolved mystery. It's a haunting reminder that life can be unpredictable and fragile, even for someone seemingly young and healthy. Hey everyone, it's Jimmy here with another reminder to hit subscribe and the notification bell if you're appreciating my content. Also, don't forget to check out the Patreon and the YouTube membership if you want to take your support up to the next level. On a cold winter night in 1799, 22-year-old Elma Sands left her Manhattan boarding house with a secret. She planned to elope with Levy Weeks. She never returned. 11 days later, her lifeless body was pulled from the bottom of a well in Lower Manhattan, shocking the city and setting the stage for one of America's first sensational trials. The investigation and trial that followed would captivate the public, pit powerful lawyers against each other, and leave a mystery that still haunts New York history. Elma Sands lived in a Greenwich Street boarding house run by her cousins, Catherine and Elias Ring. On December 22, 1799, she confided that she and Levy Weeks, a fellow boarder who had been courting her, were going to marry in secret that night. Around 8 that night, she left home, presumably with Levy. By 10, Weeks had returned alone, expressing surprise that Elma was still out and denying that they had been together earlier. When Elma didn't come home, alarms spread quickly. New York was blanketed in snow that evening, and some witnesses claimed they saw Elma riding in a one-horse sleigh with 2 men. One reportedly resembled Weeks, and the horse matched one owned by Levy's brother Ezra. Suspicion fell on Weeks as the last person seen with her, but nothing came of it just yet. A few days later, boys discovered a woman's hat floating in the water of a well in Manhattan, in what's now the Soho area. It was recognized as Elma's, pointing investigators to the well. On January 2nd, 1800, searchers pulled Elma's body from the bottom of that well. Her corpse showed clear signs of foul play, and authorities started to investigate, with Weeks swiftly deemed the prime suspect. Even before Weeks was brought to trial, the city was outraged over Elma's fate. The Ring family immediately accused Levy in public, sharing details of her disappearance with the press. New York newspapers ran with the story, and soon the case was the talk of the town. In the court of public opinion, Weeks was considered guilty before he was even arrested. In a macabre twist, Elma's body was put on public display at the boarding house for several days before burial. So many people came to view the victim's body that the coffin had to be moved outside to accommodate the onlookers. This grim exhibition further stirred emotions. Seeing Elma's pale form made the tragedy real and intensified calls for justice. By the time Weeks was indicted, angry crowds were clamoring for his swift execution. Levy Weeks was a young carpenter who worked for his wealthy brother Ezra Weeks, one of New York's most prominent builders. Desperate to save Levy from a likely hanging, Ezra pulled in favors and used his connections to secure an extraordinary defense team. Notably, Ezra's company had built Alexander Hamilton's mansion, so to say he had some clout would be an understatement. Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr, usually bitter political rivals, agreed to join forces to defend Weeks. They enlisted a third attorney, Henry Brockholst Livingston, an experienced trial lawyer, and future Supreme Court justice. This dream team of counsel was unprecedented and turned the trial into a major public spectacle. The trial of Levy Weeks began on March 31, 1800 in New York City Hall before Chief Justice John Lansing, Jr. The case became so widely followed that crowds of onlookers from all levels of society packed the courtroom. The prosecution's case, led by Cadwallader Colden, was entirely circumstantial, with no eyewitnesses. Prosecutors argued that Weeks had seduced Elma with false promises of marriage and then eliminated her to escape the scandal, perhaps fearing she was carrying his child. Boarders from the Ring House testified about Levy and Elma's relationship and the events of the night she vanished. One witness claimed to see him lurking around the well at night shortly before the crime. Another witness, a fellow boarder, claimed that Levy was the type to get into intimate situations with young ladies and leave them high and dry. He claimed that Levy promised them marriage, but insisted he couldn't do this without banging harder than a carriage wheel hitting cobblestone. Hamilton, Burr, and Livingston vigorously countered these claims. The defense cast doubt on every aspect of the story. They argued there may not even have been a killing at all. To support this theory, they brought in medical witnesses who now asserted that Elma might have jumped into the well herself out of despair. Acquaintances described Elma as emotionally troubled before her death, even recalling that she had questioned the purpose of life. Further, they insinuated that she may have been having affairs with married men, including her cousin's husband. The trial was unusually long for its time, running into the early morning hours of the second day. As proceedings dragged past midnight, jurors struggled to stay awake. Justice Lansing refused to pause for rest and even denied the prosecutor a closing argument, signaling that he found the evidence against Weeks weak. In his charge to the jury, Lansing bluntly stated that the proof was insufficient to convict. It took the jury only about 5 minutes to deliberate before returning a verdict of not guilty. Levy Weeks was acquitted, ending the trial in astonishing fashion. The verdict did not calm the public's fury. Many New Yorkers were outraged that Weeks walked free, believing that a rich man's influence had helped him escape punishment. Judge Lansing's conduct was widely criticized as a betrayal of justice. In the aftermath, Weeks was shunned and harassed. Unable to live in New York amid the hostility, he left the city and eventually settled in Natchez, Mississippi, where he quietly rebuilt his life as an architect until his death in 1819. No one else was ever charged for Elma's death, which meant the case remained officially unsolved. Some key figures in the trial later met tragic ends. In 1804, Burr and Hamilton's simmering rivalry exploded in their famous duel. Years later, in 1829, Judge Lansing vanished without a trace, leading some to whisper about a curse tied to Elma Sands. While it looks to me that there wasn't sufficient evidence to find Levy Weeks guilty, there's no denying that the proceedings carried a troubling stench of influence and favoritism. The entire case rested on circumstantial fragments, yet the speed with which the judge dismissed the prosecution's arguments felt unusual even by early American standards. Lansing's refusal to allow a full closing argument and his insistence on pushing the jury through exhaustion are odd choices. However, his pointed remarks about the weakness of the evidence creates the impression that the outcome had been shaped long before the verdict was delivered. Add to that the towering presence of Hamilton and Burr, both political powerhouses with deep ties to Ezra Weeks, and the appearance of a slanted playing field becomes hard to ignore. Levy may have walked free because the evidence wasn't strong enough, but the way the trial unfolded left many convinced justice had been openly bent.